Welcome to the Raise Podcast. I'm Coral.
And I'm Natalie.
And we're here to help you raise your game whilst raising the next generation.
We want to help put the power in your hands and inspire you to live your life the way you choose. Ready to raise some questions?
Well, so are we.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Raise Podcast. Today, we're joined by Dr. Sam Watts, an Ayurvedic expert and cancer specialist who is transforming the way we think about cancer prevention, treatment, and healing. He is the author of the Ayurvedic Approach to Cancer, which blends ancient Ayurvedic wisdom with modern science to support cancer prevention and treatment. Dr. Watts explores how food, sleep, stress, movement, and emotional well-being all play a powerful role in healing on a cellular level. It's a powerful reminder that there is always something we can do when it comes to our health and healing, and we already know that there are going to be some really insightful takeaways from this conversation.
Sam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Oh, we're really excited. So firstly, though, I think it would be best to start with explaining to the listeners what exactly is Ayurveda for those who aren't familiar with its practice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question in many ways because it's such a broad topic. But ultimately, Ayurveda, the way I think about Ayurveda and the way I talk about it is, it's almost like a car manual. You know, if you drive a Ford, if you've got a maintenance manual for a Mercedes, it's not going to help you because it's a different car, different engine. And Ayurveda is kind of the same with us in that it's a blueprint for how we understand our own body as a completely unique entity. So it's a full body holistic system of medicine that helps people optimize every facet of their life, every facet of their well-being, their mental well-being, their physical well-being, their levels of happiness, health, through understanding not what's good for someone else or what a book tells you is generally good, but what is good for you as a specific individual. And it covers everything. It covers dietary applications and herbal medicines and exercise and yoga and meditation. So there's not really anything that we can do that doesn't fall under the remit or the banner of Ayurveda. So, and that's what I love about it, is the fact that it allows us to really look at ourselves and say, well, okay, I'm feeling like this or I'm feeling like that, but how do I modify my life to make that go away or to feel the very best version of myself? So ultimately, we can think of it as an individualized system of holistic medicine, I guess is the easiest way of describing it.
Amazing. I really like the way you described that with the Ford and the Mercedes, because I think for a lot of people, I think that's just a really clear way.
Yeah, because I think there's so much, now with the media, there's so much information about health, but there's no such thing as something that's good for you. Even something like, I don't know, ginger, one of the healthiest foods on the planet. Is ginger healthy or is it unhealthy? It doesn't have those qualities. If you've got a peptic ulcer, it's really bad for you. But if you've got poor circulation, it's really good for you. Is ginger good or bad? It's neither. It depends upon the person consuming it. And that applies to every single thing you could ever do. So it's just about that individualization.
Yeah, I love that. And can you tell us about your journey into medicine and kind of how you then found out about Ayurveda?
Well, I actually grew up with it in many ways because in my street, our next door neighbour, who's one of my family's closest friends, was a Sri Lankan homeopathic doctor, Ayurvedic doctor, Western doctor, and he treated us from where I was born. So I grew up with all things natural medicine.
Amazing.
And then when I got into cancer research, so much of what Ayurveda was saying aligned so perfectly with what the Western survivorship research was saying, that it almost shocked me that no one was tying the two together and saying, well, we've got this framework here that the West is supporting, Ayurveda is advocating, but no one's actually joining the dots. That's what really kind of prompted me to get into the cancer world, because I just saw how much benefit there would be if you're living with cancer, taking all the best of conventional medicine. It's so much more you can add on to that with some little bits here, there, and everywhere using the Ayurvedic approaches. So that's what led me into the cancer research world, and then joining that with the Ayurvedic side.
That's so interesting. So with your book, what do you hope that readers will take away from it? And what is the Ayurvedic approach to cancer?
I mean, I think that the aim for writing the book was ultimately about hope, because, my biggest passion and interest in the world of cancer care is something called ECAPs, ECAP, which is a clinical term for exceptional cancer patients. So these are people with a terminal prognosis. They usually have less than about 12 months to live. They're often not having conventional treatment because there's no real benefit at that point. And then they go on to survive 5, 10, 7, 10, 15 years. and what they do is clinically impossible. But it's not, because it happens all the time. It's not common, but it's not rare either. And what my passion is in many ways is trying to understand, how have you done that? If someone's looked you in the eyes and told you you're going to be dead in 12 months, and yet 10 years later you're still here, in good health, what have you done? Because if you can interview and speak and analyze hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ECAPs and identify common denominators that they've all done, then in theory those practices will be predictive of what allowed them to become exceptional. You can then pick those up, give them to everyone else, and hope that maximizes their ability to become exceptional. So what I wanted to do with the book was show that it doesn't matter what you're facing, it doesn't matter what bombs are going off around you, it doesn't matter what the statistics are, there's always, always, always the ability to survive this. That doesn't mean that everyone can survive terminal cancer, but it does mean that everyone has the potential to. Not possibly, maybe, sometimes, all of the time, without exception. If you are living with a terminal prognosis, you can survive. It's not a question of can you, it's how do I maximize my ability to do that? And the Ayurvedic approach to cancer is about that framework. It's about the framework of the exceptional cancer patient research, dovetailed with the Western research, to say there in one place is ultimately what I think, after 15 or 20 years of research, is the single best thing you can do to maximize your ability to thrive in the face of cancer. And I think it's that hope message. Hope is the single most powerful force, I think, in medicine, in any context, no matter what you're trying to do, whether it's trying to conceive a baby, overcome Parkinson's, survive with cancer. If you have belief that you can do it, it causes this cascade response in the physiology of the body that mobilizes healing mechanisms that you can't mobilize anywhere else. This is part of a Nobel Prize winning piece of research going back to the 70s. Someone called Dr. Candace Pert, and she showed these things called molecules of emotion, neuropeptides, which are essentially your beliefs manifested. So if you're thinking, if someone's looked you in the eyes and told you, I'm sorry, Mr. Watts, you've got 12 months to live, and you're overcome with disempowerment, fear, helplessness, hopelessness, every cell in the body suppresses little bits of chemicals that experience those same emotions. So just when you need your body to be in the utmost level of vitality, it starts suppressing and dropping. Whereas if someone looks you in the eyes and says, I'm sorry, Mr. Watts, you've got 12 months to live, but you say, well, I appreciate your prognosis, and I appreciate you, and I respect you and your statistics, but I choose my own reality. And that reality is that in 10 years, I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be here healthy, and this is how I'm going to do it. And then you mobilize a framework that actually allows you to do that. You overhaul your diet, you start meditating, you start doing all the things that, are predictive of exceptional. Every cell in your body starts secreting emotions that say the same thing. And then what happens? Your whole body is exactly where you need it to be. And I've never come across an ECAP ever, and I've had the privilege of working with hundreds of them. I've never come across an ECAP who hasn't, with every atom of their being, genuinely believed they could survive. It's the single biggest predictor. And that's not just cancer. Okay. It's Alzheimer's, it's Parkinson's, it's coronary artery disease, it's stroke rehab, everything. You have to, the question I get asked the most on social media is, what's the first thing I should do when I'm facing a terminal prognosis or an incurable prognosis? And I said, before researching your diets and your herbs and this, that, and the other, look at your life. Look at, what you want to achieve with your life. There's a big difference between not wanting to die and wanting to live. Why do you want to live? What sets you alight? What's going to make you get up in the morning, jump out of bed, and be desperate to seize this day? Because if you engineer a life that sets you alight, your cells will keep you here. And you've got to get that. You've got to get that. And if I've got time to digress, I've got a great real story of this. So I was working with a man with terminal stage 4 prostate cancer. And he, at this point, is already about, what would it have been, about 4 months past his best case prognosis. He wasn't an international, but he was a European competitive vegetable grower. He'd won, the biggest tomato, he won virtually everything. And the only thing he hadn't won the biggest marrow. And he looked me in the eyes and said, I refuse to die. I refuse to die until I've grown. I think it was like an 18-inch marrow. I don't know what it was. It was ridiculous. And his wife used to say to me every autumn when he hadn't done it, she used to breathe a sigh of relief because she knew that he had another year. Oh, and I stopped working with him just before COVID, but at that point he was probably 3-4 years post best case. So he's an ECAP. He's an exceptional cancer patient. And he was doing everything else. He was doing the best of conventional medicine and the best of, diet, he wasn't just doing that. But that to me is what's predictive of why he was not just surviving, but thriving. He was active, healthy, happy, productive. He woke up in the morning and his thing was, I need to grow this damn marrow. And it was enough to set him alight. So
Wow.
the book is about that. It's about how you can't achieve impossible unless you know it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't one cancer in the world where someone with a terminal prognosis hasn't survived from. So just knowing that I'm living with stage 4 lung cancer, someone with that prognosis has survived and become an ECAP. Just knowing that changes everything. Get that in place, add everything else, and then you're flying. So the book was for me was about trying to put that message into one place and then build a framework around it that had the best evidence-based practices around survivorship. And if you do those things, I genuinely believe everyone can move towards exceptional. So that's what I wanted to achieve in the book.
That's so powerful. And actually, it must be so scary for people having that diagnosis. So how would you navigate that or get someone to feel more hopeful when they don't feel hopeful?
Yeah.
And I guess you have framework in your book to, steps or habits that people can do, right?
Yeah, there's lots of neurologically proven practices and tools you can do that actually change the way the brain works in favor of how you want it to work. Something called neuroplasticity, which I'm sure you guys have probably discussed in this room in different guests and whatnot. But our brain is malleable, it's plastic. So if we're living with a brain that says, I'm terminal, I can't survive, I'm going to be dead in 12 months, that's just a neural pathway. You can do what you want with that. You can expand it, you can make it stronger, you can make it weaker, you can erase it. So how do you erase it and replace it with one that says, well, I don't care what you've told me, I'm going to be here next year, I'm going to be here in 5 years. And things, even it sounds really weak and phony, but even things like vision boarding, just one simple technique. We know from the neurological research that if you create a vision board or an action board of all of the things that are profoundly meaningful to you, your kids, watching your kids grow up, places you want to visit, and you look at that every day, the brain, it's like if you're watching a scary movie and you're on your own and it's February and it's dark and rainy and cold, it's a film, don't you? There's a director there, there's a coffee machine, they're actors, but you still get scared, don't you? Your blood pressure still goes up, you still feel scared because what the brain perceives, it believes. So if you're creating an action or a vision board and it's seeing you in Disneyland in 4 years, when you've got a year to live, the brain doesn't care that someone else will say that's a load of rubbish. It sees it and it believes it. And so there's lots of things you can do that are neurologically proven that you can hack that system. You can erase that very fear-based response and you can replace it with very, very empowered, exceptional driving responses. So things like visualization, things like vision boarding, meditation is very, very important. Interestingly, you can't actually create those new pathways in the brain unless you access theta waves, so theta brain waves. So you could be telling yourself till you're blue in the face that I'm going to be here in 5 years. But if you're saying that from your very beta brain, like now what we're doing now, our beta brain is dominant, you're thinking, talking, the brain just says that's a load of rubbish. You've just been told you're going to be dead in a year. Whereas if you're able to then, so it's called suggestibility, if you can then plant that seed in a brain that is neurologically suggestible, the brain actually buys into it.
So is that in a meditation
Yeah,
state?
it's only in theta waves can you do that.
Right,
So actually why things like meditation, forest bathing is one of the most effective ways of activating theta, chanting, prayer. So there's all these things that have to be lined up, but it's a learned skill. Some people are better at it, some people are worse at it, but everyone can do it. I've never worked with someone or talked to someone these practices who at some point hasn't had that, it's clicked. Suddenly it makes sense. And there is usually a tipping point. I remember working with one lady who, whenever she saw holiday, commercials on TV, she'd always feel really sad and overwhelmed because she wouldn't get to go on another summer holiday. She wouldn't get to go to Disney. And then she worked and worked and worked. And then after about 6 months, when these commercials came on, she felt joy. She felt, I want to go there. And her brain thought, well, why wouldn't you? Of course you can go there. Why wouldn't you be able to go there? Because it believed that she would be alive to do that. So it was this eureka moment. Before that point, she used to see a future event and feel really overwhelmed and sad. And then she saw the same event and she thought, wow, I'm going to live that. So it often is it's not there, and then suddenly it is there. And when you get that, then you know you're flying, because you know your body is supporting what you're trying to achieve, which is ultimately survive. Yeah, so there are lots of techniques.
It's like totally reframing your mindset, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
And we've spoken about this before, about gratitude.
Oh, yeah.
And how when you're in a state of gratitude, you can't feel negativity at the same time.
Yeah, it's impossible to feel both at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah,
so it's
literally.
just making your brain more familiar with those, the positivity rather than negativity.
I think that's one of the downsides as well of I think the NHS is a phenomenal institution at what it does, but I think it's not designed for what it's dealing with now. It's not designed for these long-term chronic ailments. And, and it hasn't got, I don't think it's got the ability to, the way it delivers information, I think because of the legal implications, it's so brutally honest, and it doesn't need to be like that. And I think it's I think some people are kind of doomed before they begin, because they believe their clinical care team so much that if they say it's now incurable, nothing can help them. They subscribe to the institution so much that nothing can undo that. And I remember working with, when I was working at a hospital in Portsmouth, working with stage 4 ovarian cancer patients. There were 2 senior consultants there, and one was called the door hander doctor, because there was an example, a case where he walked into the clinic room, opened the door, kept his hand on the door handle, didn't sit down, and said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, Mrs. Bloggs, your results have come back. It's now metastasized to your spine and liver. There's not really much we can do. You've probably got about 6 months. The nurse here will talk you through your options," and walked out again.
Wow.
And on the same ward, there's another female senior consultant who is mind-blowing, Chinese doctor. And in this similar situation, same clinical situation, you sit down and say, "Well, the scans have come back. It's not what we were hoping for. It's not the best news. It's metastasized and spread. But there's things I can do. There's massive amount that you can do. We've got this. We've got this." And her patients statistically outlived all the other patients, despite their prognosis being the same, because they left. It wasn't, this isn't, they left, went into the car park, got in the car with their husbands. It was like, this isn't what we were hoping for. But she's told us there's things we can do. So that her body's like, well, it's all right, we've got this. Where the other poor lady went home thinking, well, I've got 6 months, there's nothing we can do. Same news, same. So it's almost at the point of contact
and delivery.
Yeah. You're almost doomed to fail before you begin, unless you've got that ability to get past that. So I'm telling you that, how do I navigate past that belief? And that's, I think it's so hard to see, because people are derailed, with no fault of their own before they begin. And it's not just cancer; it's any chronic, lifelong or long-term illness. This is the same theory. So anyone that's listening to this, struggling with diabetes or arthritis or insomnia, it's the same mechanisms, different pathology, but it's the same pathway, it's the same mechanism. So we have to take control. We have to mobilize empowerment, but it has to come from a foundation of hope, because if that isn't there, nothing else is going to work. Well, it's not going to work as well.
Yeah. So how do you see Ayurveda working with modern medicine? Is it like complementary, or how do you navigate that?
It works perfectly. In America now, like the American Cancer Society, they've got big integrated models where they're combining conventional with, they released 3 published papers about how we actually do this. How do we integrate Ayurveda into conventional oncology? And it was like hand in glove. It worked perfectly, because you had all the conventional medicine, even things like chemotherapy, one of the main treatments, obviously, that comes with all kinds of horrific side effects. We now know that certain Ayurvedic practices, some herbs, but also circadian medicine, when we deliver chemotherapy, can increase the cytotoxicity, so the ability of the chemotherapy to kill cancer cells, but reduce its toxicity on healthy cells. Same chemotherapy, same dose, but much bigger impact, much lower side effect profile. So that's using an accepted Western drug, but by applying Ayurvedic principles, you get a bigger gain. So, and that applies, there's so many areas where we can, whether it's managing side effects, whether it's optimizing treatment impacts, there's so many ways that we can empower people. You don't have to, you might lose your hair, but you don't have to subscribe to what you see in the media. You have chemotherapy, you're being sick for 5 months. you can do things about this. You create your own path, and it's just about that empowerment. So I think Ayurveda can give so much. I think the herbs are a really big part. We're seeing lots of this now, lots of clinical trials in hospital-based oncology around how herbs can have an anti-cancer effect. So herbs, the diet, the lifestyle, the circadian biology, all of these kind of things are they're easy to do, they're evidence-based, and they're pretty profound.
I think that's really interesting because I feel, or from what I've seen, in the media or whatever, a lot of people either think it's one way or the other way.
Yeah.
So I think that's really nice for people to know that they can still, if there is fear for them, that they can go and still see their oncologist.
Yeah.
But also there are things to do to support you during that process as well.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And that's where I think the label alternative medicine is so bad. Because it doesn't have to be alternative. It can be integrative medicine. It has to be the medicine of the future. Yeah. Because there are some cases where Western medicine isn't that helpful. There are some cases where Ayurvedic medicine isn't that helpful. And if you have a heart attack, Ayurveda is going to do nothing for you. So it's not about saying one is better than the other. It's saying, well, how do I get the very best of each model and pull that together into a framework that's as individualized to me as possible? So I think it takes away the fear then, because if you say it's either or, people are going to make a decision when they're already overwhelmed by health crises. So I think if you can say, well, you can combine both of these, you can take the best of both. And actually by using both, you actually get a synergistic response where the total game is bigger than the sum of the parts because they're working together. So it's almost like a gift that keeps on giving. So yeah, it just works together so well.
I love that.
Yeah.
Just a quick break to talk to you about Happy Mammoth. At Raise, our goal is to help women and mothers to live their best lives, and that's exactly what Happy Mammoth want you to do too.
They are dedicated to helping women take control of their well-being at every stage of their life. Hormones are essential for our overall health and happiness as they impact everything from our energy levels, sleep, to our mood and our focus. And when they're out of balance, well, life can feel pretty out of balance too, which is why we're excited to share Happy Mammoth's Hormone Harmony with you.
Hormone Harmony isn't just for women going through menopause, it's for anyone experiencing the effects of hormonal changes. We both take Hormone Harmony as part of our daily supplement go-tos and are so impressed with the ingredients and benefits we feel from taking it. They're packed with adaptogens, which are really powerful herbal extracts that help your body manage stress, and it's designed to naturally restore balance and help you feel like yourself again.
You may have actually seen Hormone Harmony on social media already because women cannot stop raving about how it has transformed their lives. A bottle of Hormone Harmony is sold every 24 seconds.
So whether you're navigating life's transitions into menopause or just looking for hormonal balance, check out Hormone Harmony from Happy Mammoth, because life's too short to let your hormones hold you back.
For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code RAISE at checkout.
And what are some of the most powerful things that we can do daily, do you think, to reduce our risk of cancer?
I mean, I kind of bore people to death about this, but I keep on coming back to it. It's about circadian alignment, because it's just, every month there's more research coming out, because our body works on this 24-hour clock, and every single cell in the body is dependent upon that clock, whether it's working well, whether it's working average, whether it's working poorly. Not a few cells or some cells, every single one of the 60 trillion cells in our body is being informed by this circadian mechanism. And if we're out of line with it, everything goes out of kilter, not just a little bit. And that's particularly true in the context of cancer, because we know that cancer cells have their own circadian clock. And if you're living in circadian alignment, people have longer lifespans. So there was a clinical study done where you had a group of people with the same brain cancer, a glioma, and some of them one of the group they were entrained. So they got up at the right time, they exposed themselves to UV light in the first 90 minutes, all the things you have to do. Mm-hmm. And their cancer cells entrained. So the actual circadian clock in the cancer cell was entrained properly. Those who didn't, they had disaligned circadian clocks in the cancer cells, and they died significantly earlier. Everything else was equal. But that's mad. Yeah, that's mad if you've got cancer, but preventatively, that is manna from heaven. Yeah. Because so much of at the structural changes that have to happen from a healthy cell to a precancerous cell to a fully cancerous cell, those changes are not exclusively triggered, but are empowered by circadian misalignment. So, for example, if you're a shift worker, shift worker is now classified as a type 2A carcinogen. So not possibly maybe, it's listed as a carcinogen in the same way that tar is, tobacco is, asbestos is.
That's so scary.
Because it's so disruptive.
So it's saying that if you are chronically circadian misaligned, you are living in a pro-cancerous environment. Your body is and people think, well, okay, I'm not a shift worker, so it doesn't apply to me. But if you look at blue light after sunset, it's shift working as far as your clock is concerned. If you're eating after about 7:30 p.m. when your nighttime clock genes are telling your digestive system to switch off, because we don't, diurnal daytime mammals don't eat at nighttime. No one does. But you're putting food in, what happens? Your digestive system has to wake up. It can't not process the food. And suddenly you're in a state of circadian misalignment. So people think, well, actually, I'm not a shift worker. It doesn't apply to me. About 60 to 70% of adults who aren't shift workers are circadian misaligned, which to me, it keeps me awake at night, ironically, because that to me is one of the biggest public health time bombs I've ever heard of. I think it makes smoking look, not insignificant, but I think we're going to see this explode. Heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, diabetes, respiratory illnesses, they all have a trigger that is pulled by circadian misalignment. And I think one of the things, particularly for our children, this is a massive thing with smartphones. Their bodies, particularly, under 18s, their cells are dividing so much more quickly. They have to be entrained. And they're on these, phone doom scrolling, especially in winter when it gets light earlier. Yeah. And it's catastrophic. And they're the first generation. Smoking, we've got data from the 1970s. We know we can say what it does, but this is the first generation. So in 30 years, is it going to be like asbestos? They're going to say, this is, why did we let these people do this?
Never mind the EMF
exposure. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you add that into the fray. That's why you see people calling it a time bomb, because it's multifactorial in a catastrophic way. And we're not talking here about relatively insignificant things. These are catastrophic illnesses that are directly implicated in this framework. So so to answer you, that's a very long-winded answer, but to answer your question, I think doing things every day that we know align us and minimizing the things that disalign us or misalign us I think it has to be an absolute priority.
Yeah, and I think that these things as well, they're free.
They're free.
They're not difficult.
No.
So I think pushing things that are free and simple like this, and the fact that you're, talking about this in such a, I just think it's really, really powerful for people to try and start implementing these really simple practices into their lives,
I think the free argument is really important, because I think there's a lot of pushback in the media now, isn't there, about how we're going to get, this split communities where the less affluent are going to get sick because they can't afford herbs and supplements and acupuncture.
Or biohacking devices.
And then those who can. But actually, some of the most powerful things like circadian alignment, like forest bathing, there's very few things that can do what that can do, and it's free. And I think...
Or breathing or movement or...
Sleep. Yeah. Like, it doesn't need to be. And there was a brilliant... study that came out based around circadian rhythm in COVID, obviously when the first lockdown, which is where are we now? 3 years ago, almost to the day, isn't it?
No, 5 years.
Sorry, 5 years. Sorry, 5 years. Cracky, yeah. Obviously, the mental health went through the roof, didn't it? The mental health issues because of isolation, and then all the forums where people were supporting each other, they were being monitored by mental health researchers, and they noticed this trend, which was people saying, I feel completely overwhelmed, anxious, depressed. But if I sit on the balcony or sit in the garden or sit in the park and listen to birdsong, it's like the anxiety is eradicated instantly. And the researchers were like, well, why? What's going on with that? And what they discovered, that we have something in our body called the Paleolithic genome, which is the same genome so when we evolved as a species, 200,000 years ago in Tanzania, about 90% of that genome is still active in us now, and it's controlling us now. And they said, from an evolutionary perspective, when there's birdsong, it means there's one, an abundance of resources, and two, a lack of predators. So when our forefathers heard birdsong, they knew they could relax, they could eat, they could just chill out. And when we hear it now in a city park, the same triggers are activated. So we instantly feel safe.
In us.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
So interesting. And they've looked now at that upon, chemical, things like cortisol. They've actually, but they couldn't do it in COVID because obviously it was lockdown. But then they've actually correlated with, hormone profiles and immune status. And what they show is like half hour listening to birdsong is completely optimizes our physiology.
Well, I heard it reduces stress by up to 600%. Yeah. So now knowing why, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and that's something I talk about in the book is that Paleolithic genome, because so much of how we're driven is driven by that genome.
It makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah. Like community, we evolved in communities as hunter-gatherers, where everyone had each other's back. You couldn't survive in that kind of environment unless you were a completely unified unit. And if you feel like someone's got your back, then you feel safe. Whereas if we're more isolated now, aren't we? We're working in isolation more and we're online more. And that creates this almost genomic uncertainty of, well, if I've got a problem or I can't pay the mortgage or I'm going through a relationship breakup, is there someone who's got my back? Because we've evolved to always have that in a tribe. And if we haven't got it, we feel isolated. And we know from the research that causes really significant changes to immune status and inflammatory status and this, that, and the other. So all these things, in terms of disease prevention, they sound like they're outliers, but they're not. They're central and they're free. It comes back to this free. Anyone can go sit in the park. Even if you live in the middle of London, you can go to the park. You can buy a CD. Not a CD, crikey, that makes it sound really old. You can download an app or whatever where you can listen to it digitally, which is still as effective. So
is it?
Yeah, I've done that as well.
Listen to birdsong on Spotify.
Yeah, you can listen to birdsong on Spotify.
That's nice even for children.
Yeah,
in the background,
great.
Yeah, I like that.
So it's all free or very, very cheap. So these kind of things, cancer prevention, disease prevention plays the long game. It's looking at decades, not years. And if we do things now, when we get to our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, that's where we're going to reap the rewards. All diseases have incredibly long latency periods. If I'm diagnosed with prostate cancer in 10 years, the symptoms might appear then, but the seeds for it are probably being sown now. And I can do things to stop that. I can speed it up, I can stop it, I can slow it down, I can reverse it. It's in my hands, in all of our hands. It's just how. So these kind of lifestyle hacks are so powerful and so evidence-based as well.
Yeah. So in terms of stress through an Ayurvedic lens, how does that impact kind of our bodies and what can we do to kind of bring us back to a more grounded state, I guess?
Yeah, I think it impacts upon everything, doesn't it? 80% of diseases are believed to have a foundation in a chronic stress response.
Which is mad, isn't it? Because now we're living in such a stressful world. It's like we're so misaligned, as you were saying.
Yeah.
It's like trying to find that balance is really hard for people, isn't it?
So hard.
We just need to simplify and kind of, I guess you've got all these tips.
Yeah, well, I think, Ayurvedically, though, there's the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, which are like
we were going to come to that in a little bit. So let's go for it now. Yeah, great.
It's a can of worms once you open it. But, essentially, it's the three mind-body constitutions. So in each one, there's an infinite array of variations, but...
So they're different body types for those who don't know, aren't they?
Different body types, but also mental constitutions as well.
Okay.
So Vata is associated with excitability, restlessness, mobility.
I was told by a doctor I was very Vata.
You look very Vata.
Oh, do I?
You're very Vata.
What do I look like?
Yeah, so do you. Well, you're twins.
Well, not actually.
Not actually. So it's associated with, excitability, always doing, thinking, multitasking. And they're very Vatagenic people are very prone to stress, anxiety, overwhelm, because they're trying to do a million things at once.
Does sound like us.
I think our culture really propagates it, because what does our culture tell us? It's relentlessly doing things, isn't it? We can't just sit still and just chill out. So I think that stress response is a very, from an Ayurvedic lens, is a very Vatagenic response to life, where you feel overwhelmed, you feel like too much is being asked of you, and it's more than you can give, and you're rushing here, there, and everywhere, and you just feel completely overwhelmed. Like you just want to sit in a dark room, which I think we've all had. You've got kids, we just want to just to sit there and just shut off. So Ayurveda has something called the gunas, which are in clinical Ayurvedic medicine, they're how you observe the doshas, how you can actually see and this, so you can diagnose. So Vata is characterized by qualities like lightness, mobility, and coldness. So lightness in terms of physically, frame, but also light, mobile, light, always doing, thinking, often cold body temperature, cold extremities, things like that. So the way to manage that would be, like increases, like opposites decrease. So if you're feeling very light and unsettled and stressed and anxious, you want things that are grounding, things that physically ground you, psychologically ground you. So, forest bathing, when it forces you to sit down, and earth, it's the opposite. Things like meditation, listening to birdsong, grounding, yoga, asanas, shavasana, lying down. So that's what I mean. It's about understanding yourself, because if you know you're Vatagenic, or your partner's Vatagenic, rather than getting cross with them about why they're responding in X, Y, or Z, you can actually understand it. And if you understand it, you can put things in place to mitigate it. So it's not just about understanding ourselves, but how we manage the people closest to us. So one, they're better, but two, we don't get unsettled by their default settings. So, and in terms of cancer, stress is, and prevention particularly, stress is a huge topic. There was a big study done in America where they showed that 84% of all people on the East Coast, well, not all, but all the people, it was about 120,000 people who they studied, had a significant life stressor in the 12 to 16 months before diagnosis. 84%, which is enough to suggest causality probably. And some of those were good stresses, like a job promotion, but suddenly they were leaving the house earlier, getting home later, more work. They wanted the promotion, but it's still more stress. And they've now linked, how that kind of stress affects immune, anti-cancer immune parameters and things like that. So, our society is so stress driven, isn't it? And I said, I think every day.
It's a hustle culture.
Oh, it's a hustle culture.
Yeah.
So we have to be doing things every day that put a lid on it, that just mitigate that chronicity. Because it's not, what's interesting about stress, it's not the stress itself. Again, that Paleolithic genome, we're evolved to deal with stress. The saber-toothed tiger comes along, we either kill it or we run away from it. But within about an hour or so, the threat is gone. So that stress is we're really attuned to acute stress. It's actually very good for us. Where it becomes bad is where it's chronic. There's no end to it. So we need to, meditation, forest bathing, these kind of things, they break the chronicity into a series of acute stresses. And that then stops it being so damaging. So I think every day we need to be doing things that are proven to help sever that stress response.
And actually one of the most important things is sleep, isn't it? But I know for me, when I'm feeling stressed, if I've had a good night's sleep, I feel very different in how I respond to stress as opposed to when I've broken night's sleep or not had enough sleep.
Yeah. Oh, everything's worse, isn't it?
Yeah, so much harder.
Yeah. And again, that's that circadian alignment because our cells are out of kilter.
Yeah.
I think, and also I think there's that gratitude, choice, response. We can always choose how we respond to any. It feels like it's an instinctual reaction. Someone cuts you up in traffic and you get angry, but it's actually a part of you that can watch yourself getting angry. Like in Ayurveda, it's called the observer. Okay. So you can, there's me getting angry, there's me getting frustrated, and you could insult me now, and it's my choice if I feel insulted or if I choose to not feel insulted. You could say, that was a really good recording, and I could be pleased if flattered, or I could choose to not be flattered. But it's my choice. You give me the stimuli, but it's my choice what I do with that. And that's a very, in terms of Ayurvedic, philosophy and spirituality, they talk a huge amount about detachment, non-attachment, and non-judgment. Kind of was going through the world, being in it, but not really a part of it. And I think it's actually the lotus flower is Ayurveda's symbol because it spends its whole life in water but can't get wet. And that's why, because that's what they say life should be like. You should be in the world and enjoying it, but be able to be detached from it so that we're in control of our responses rather than an outside event affecting us. Very hard to do.
Yeah.
Very hard to do. But I think,
easier said than done.
So hard. But I think if you begin to cultivate that detachment, it's one of the most powerful life skills I think you could ever muster. Yeah, but it's not easy.
This year, let's say no to microplastics, no to toxins, and yes to clean, healthy hydration, because water matters more than you think.
We're made up of 60% water, so what we drink literally makes us who we are. Enter Win-Win Water, the game changer in pure toxin-free hydration.
Most tap water is full of chemicals, fluoride, metals, hormone disruptors, and even medications. And unfortunately, most bottled water is made from fossil fuel-based plastic, which can leach nanoplastics into the water we drink.
That's where Win-Win Water comes in. Not only are all their bottles 100% plant-based, made from sustainable sugarcane, but their water is locally sourced mineral water that is naturally high in electrolytes and minerals. No need to add anything in, it's just as nature intended, real, live water.
So we're huge advocates for the UK-based water company Win-Win Water. For us, it really is the starting point for health. If you're drinking the best quality water with no toxins, your body will thank you for it. And in this case, the environment will thank you too.
Win-Win Water are currently offering 10% off subscriptions with the code RAISE, so that you can get the best quality water delivered for you and your family directly to your door.
Visit winwinwater.co.uk to find out more.
And what are the other doshas? Because you mentioned Vata, and what are the other two body
Pitta,
types? Yeah.
which are very driven, focused, leadery, kind of type A. If you live with the Pitta, you'll know it. Like
I was told I was Vata, Pitta,
Well,
but I was more Vata with a bit of Pitta.
Yeah. Well, the fact you're doing this is a very, the fact you're running this, and it's a very Pitta kind of. Well, actually, this is a very Vata Pittagenic, very, very creative. But also, you have to put a lot of drive behind it, don't you, and lots of focus. But yeah, Pitta is like one of the most consistent kind of, often the best way of diagnosing the doshas in people aren't the clinical things, they're almost like the lifestyle things. Mm-hmm. So for Pittas, it's things like food rage, hangry. Like if you know someone who, they have lunch every day at 12:30 and then they can't eat because something's thrown their day out of kilter, and they get really irritable, short-tempered, really grouchy. That's one of the most, common Pittagenic signs. And the Vata, a similar Vata one is someone who's got about 7 unread books by their bedside table. They pick up this book, it's the best thing since sliced bread. They're all into it, and they see another book, and then that catches their attention, and they start that, and then suddenly they've got like 4 or 5, or same with films or podcasts.
They flit around. Yeah.
So Vata's very mobile, like Pitta is very kind of driven, focused, fiery leaders, and then Kapha is, the world needs more Kaphas, I think. The Kaphas are the very chilled out.
Yeah.
Who's that, sorry?
My mum.
Yeah.
Is she?
Yeah.
The world, if you've got a Kapha in your family, you're blessed.
Oh, she'll love that.
And I think back in the day, the schooling system used to break left-handedness out of kids. I almost feel like our
That happened to me.
commercial and educational systems are doing that with Kaphas, because our society values the creativity and energy of Vata. It values the workaholic, kind of driven qualities of Pitta. But the loving, empathetic, kind, slower, chilled out, nurturing.
More grounded.
What employer, not many universities or employers, in their interviews talk about how relaxed you are.
No.
So I almost feel like it's not being beaten out of us, but I think there are a lot of people who are probably quite caphagenic who live lives that aren't, because it doesn't necessarily get them to where they think they should be going by society's standards. So Kapha is very loving, very kind, a rock. Like if you've got a problem, they're solid, they're dependable, very, very just loving, kind, relaxed, chilled out, just such lovely people.
A lot slower.
Yeah.
And that's what I found anyway.
Everything about and almost when they enter into a room, like if a Vata walks into the room, it almost like the voltage goes up like 10. You almost feel a little bit like if they're overwhelmed, if they're very, very Vatagenically stimulated. Mm-hmm. Whereas a Kapha walks in, it kind of like everything just chills out. It just grounds you. You just feel.
I took my mum to an Ayurvedic retreat in the Dolomites, and when she saw the doctor, he was like, "You need to do nothing." I had this whole list of things that I need to do or should try and kind of include in my life. And he was like, I can just see absolute peace in my mind. And she was loving it. She was so happy with that. Yeah. And he said that she was
Kapha. And that's what they are usually, as long as they're living a life that is aligned with their actual, they're usually the happiest, just contented people, because the Vata Pitta types are much more inclined to always be seeking more, always looking for more. As a Kapha, not content. Whereas a Kapha's like, I'm happy with this. I don't need to,
any more.
And who's the fool? I often think, well, who? And when we're on our deathbed looking back, who's probably going to feel that they got it perhaps more. I think you need both, but they're just if you've got a Kapha in your life, I think who you're close with, I think you're truly blessed because they bring something to your life and to you as a person that you can't get, I think, anywhere else. Yeah, so if you've got a Kapha.
Be more Kapha.
Be more Kapha, yeah.
Turn it into a hashtag.
Yeah, we should. We should. But it was a great, just quickly, it was a great, when I was flying to a conference in, I can't remember, it was Berlin or Milan or somewhere years ago at Gatwick, and it was the best, and there's a bit of poetic license here, but 90% of it's true. It's the best mass example of the doshas I've ever seen because it was late. It was like 10:30. It was EasyJet, and it had been delayed. And they cancelled the flight. And what happened next was like a mass portrayal of the doshas because about a third, maybe a bit more than a third of the people up on their phones, accommodation, taxis, flights, doing, very, very Vatagenic. Another group were kind of up at the desk, trying to throttle this poor EasyJet lady, like really confrontational, angry. Their initial response was this very, very acute, kind of aggressive response, which is a very pitagenic way of dealing with something you don't like. Whereas the Kapha types kind of like sauntered over to the snack bar thing and got a Mars bar or a coffee or something. You saw the way these 250 people, whatever it was, you saw the way they received the stimuli, and their instinctive response was kind of in one of three. There was a very chilled out, doesn't matter, no one's going to die, the sun's going to come up. Yeah. The pitagenic aggression and the Vatagenic, let's fix. And I just sat there thinking, if ever you needed to understand Ayurveda, that's all you'd need. Because I
feel like now I'm just going to look at people and situations and be like, okay, you're...
Yeah. No, I did a yoga teacher training in India, and so much, obviously, we learned about Ayurveda. And afterwards, I was coming back and I was literally just observing everybody and be like, Kapha, Vata. And you do, and I bet you must do it all the time.
It takes over, doesn't it? I think it takes over, like it always gets...
And that's so Vata.
It does. And people watching, like in classical Ayurveda, that's how you're taught. You have to sit on a beach or whatever and watch people going past, and you have to, based upon their cadence and their gait and their appearance, exactly what you just said. And I think it's really interesting because every social situation, whether it's going to a coffee shop and the barista serving you, or whether it's meeting you guys or whatever, a part of your brain is constantly
in the background.
Like the traits, and it's not obsessive, but it's quite interesting because if you understand other people better, you can be better to them in terms of what they need or whatever it is. So it's not just about, I think particularly in the family setting, like I've got 3 kids and it's so bizarre because I've got an out and out Vata, an out and out Pitta, and an out and out Kapha, like in a profound way. And that's so powerful as a parent because it lets you know how to manage them differently. Like my Kapha, like she's so painfully slow in the morning, getting dressed, getting out, like it's like pulling teeth. So I know you have to get her up earlier, so she haven't got to rush her and make her feel overwhelmed. Yeah. Whereas my middle child is, an out and out Pitta, and when she was younger, we'd go out and whole days would be ruined because she hadn't eaten, and the food, literally the whole day would be ruined. Yeah. So we knew to always carry snacks or whatever it is. So it allows you, I think, domestically, if you understand the doshic constitution of the person you're living with, you can be so much more empathetic and so much more helpful to make their lives easier and therefore your own life easier. So it's very powerful.
So if anyone wants to find out their dosha, is there, should they see a practitioner or...
They're always online. You can
Is there?
I think if you're managing like a health problem or emotional, something you actually want to fix, I think going to see a clinician is better. But if you're just like what we're talking about here,
just observing.
There's some really very accurate, validated questionnaires online.
Because even for our kids and stuff, you're like, oh, that's actually quite interesting.
So useful. Yeah. So useful.
Yeah. It's similar. My husband's just finished a book called Surrounded by Idiots, and it's the 4 colours. So it's similar to the doshas, but there's yellows, greens, reds, and blues. Okay. And you see certain characteristics, and when you were just describing the doshas, it's same,
so
same,
interesting,
but different. But
Surrounded by
but he's done it from a business perspective, so he knows how to manage certain people, how to interact with people. Whether it be through sales or whatever. You then
communication,
and sometimes whether you're manipulating a situation or you want to deal with somebody, you know how to respond to them. So it can help. Knowing people's doshas can not only help, I think, in a family situation, but within life in general, can't it?
Someone you've never met, you've got a conflict with. Yeah. Like there's very few situations where that knowledge, even if it's just about yourself, isn't going to help you, because I think if you know what your triggers are, you're way better placed to put things into place to stop them, aren't you? So it's such a beautiful, holistic time-tested way of just optimizing. What do we all want to be happy and healthy, don't we? We want to be feeling fit. We want lots of energy. Ayurveda is not the only way. I don't want to put it on a pedestal and say it's the best way, but it's I think it's perhaps the most broad approach that takes into every facet of our lives, falls under what we can do Ayurvedically. And if we want to wake up vibrant and jump out of bed excited for the day and feel strong and happy and empowered, it gives you a framework in front of you that's 5,000 years old that says do that. And it's not difficult, it's not painful or laborious or expensive. It's easy. And that's what I love about it, because it gives us what we all want. We all want the same things. And this is how you get it as an individual, which is, I think, mania is such a powerful thing.
Yeah. So can we ask you if you have a morning or evening routine?
What it is.
I
don't really have an evening routine, because I teach a lot of evenings and it's quite jumbly.
Okay, so
not in terms of bedtime. I go to bed early. But so in Ayurveda, there's something called Brahma Mutra or Brahma Mutraya, which is I think it's one of the most powerful gifts that Ayurveda gives the West. So Brahma Mutra means the creator's hour. And it's
creator,
the creator's hour.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a twofold meaning. One is that, so the Brahma Mutra is the kind of the hour-ish after sunrise. And I think, a little bit before it as well. So early morning. So a bit before sunrise and about an hour after. And it's called the creator's hour because it's meant to be the time when the divine energy is strongest. And people can poo-hoo that. But I think there is definitely unique quality in that early dawn period that you don't get any other time of the day.
Yeah.
There's something palpable, isn't there? So it was about this kind of spiritually charged energy where the creator, God, whatever you want to call it, is most active, and you can tap into that. But it's also called the creator's hour because it's an hour where we create our day. So we engineer how we want this day to go. You get up with Brahma Mutra, so you get up around sunrise-ish. So, now it's beautiful. Obviously in winter, it's not so easy. You need sun lamps and whatnot. Within that morning routine, there's things that you do. So things like self-massage, self-abhyanga, which is a beautiful Ayurvedic practice, meditation, shower, and then things like oil pulling, and then some sun salutations just to get things flowing in the lymph and whatnot, breakfast, and then or even things like with the meditation, things like journaling, gratitude, breakfast, and then you start your day.
Okay.
And you can do that you can condense that if you've got a really busy morning into about 15 minutes. If you've got longer, you can pick and choose. You can pick and choose. But by the time you then start the day, you feel so healthy and empowered. You particularly done I'm a huge fan of journaling because it allows you to kind of engineer how you want this day to be, the things you've got to do, the most important things, the mindset you want to cultivate, the things you need to achieve, the outlooks you want. And you've done all those things. And then you start the day and you just feel like you're almost bulletproof because you've done your mental health, your psychological health, your physical health, and those, even things like the self-massage. It's a cornerstone of Ayurvedic practice. And it sounds like such a weak, on the surface, you say, well, how can massaging your body for 5 minutes in the morning, what does that actually give you? But they've looked at this clinically. And if you look at your body before you stimulate your skin and you look at it afterwards, you are walking around in a different body. Like things like your immune counts, your inflammatory scores, your hormone profiles, your circulation, you are not the same person. And your skin is obviously the biggest organ in the body. And it's the organ that has more control over your hormones than any other part of the body.
What would you recommend people using to do the self-massage? Because I remember hearing that you should use the oil first and then get in the shower. It also helps protect your microbiome.
Yeah,
on
massively.
Your skin as well, doesn't it?
Massively. Yeah. So much, that skin microbiome is, our barrier to the outside world. So things like sesame oil, is a brilliant one. Coconut oil is good in the summer if it's quite hot. Extra virgin olive oil is quite good. So, 5 minutes. And actually, in terms of gain for effort, the whole self-care movement is about how you maximize the gains you get in the shortest period of time. Statistically, self-massage is the most powerful one. Because it gives you...
You've sold it to us. We'll be doing this by next week. We'll be like, new morning routine.
It does. It's 3 to 5 minutes. And there was to show how powerful this was, there was a study done in some of the hospitals in the north. I think it was Manchester, Nottingham and Liverpool. I can't remember. And this woman was presenting it at a conference. And it was, they were looking at people in cardiac inpatients. So the only criteria was that you're in hospital as a cardiac patient. That was it. Man, woman, old, young. And they randomized half of the people to have conventional care and the other half to have conventional care plus they were taught by the nurse to do a 5-minute self-massage at some point, ideally in the morning, and they tracked them. And the ones that did the self-massage left hospital statistically 48 hours sooner, which is massive. They had less drug medication, they had less GP appointments and less readmittance rates than those not doing it. So a nurse could teach a ward of 15 people in 10 minutes. If you're getting 300 people out of hospital 2 days sooner, economically, that's profound. But imagine you're the person, 2 extra nights in hospital. Obviously, the longer you're in hospital, typically the worse you get because your sleep's broken, the food's terrible. So 2 days is a huge gain for literally sitting in bed, massaging yourself for 5 minutes. So you extrapolate that over your life. It's called a longevity.
Cumulative, yeah.
It's called a Rasanyana. So a Rasanyana is contextually translated as that which destroys aging and disease. So there are herbs and foods and practices that are Rasanyanic, and self-massage is a longevity practice. Okay. So it's all about you're doing these little things. You're in training with the circadian rhythm. You're doing the self-massage. You're meditating. You're tweaking your diet, and suddenly you can understand why you're feeling the best version of yourself, because you're not the same person anymore. You're operating in a very different way. So it is that accumulative long-term impact that's so powerful.
And are there any foods that you specifically do and don't eat?
It changes quite a lot seasonally, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think seasonal eating is really big in Ayurveda, something called Rituchara, which is seasonal routines. And again, I think one of the downsides, and I'm probably going to get heckled for saying this, is, I don't know, but one of the downsides of Ayurveda is that I think it's quite bad in the West anyway, at making things more commonsensical. Like there can be long lists of foods, like don't eat this, do eat that. And if you're new to it, it's completely overwhelming. Mm-hmm. Whereas actually what it actually teaches is intuitive eating. And I think if it was a boiling hot summer's day and someone gave you a big bowl of vegetable casserole or a refreshing Greek salad, most people would pick the refreshing Greek salad. Mm-hmm. In the middle of January, the same options, you'd probably pick the soup. That's not a conscious decision, is it? You don't think, that's an intuitive. Our body knows usually what kind of foods we need. If we're connected, if we're tuning in and saying, am I feeling tired? Am I feeling full? Am I feeling heavy? Am I feeling, stressed? We need different kinds of foods based upon how we're feeling. And the best way of eating is to just eat based upon what what the seasons dictate, and to antidote how you're feeling. If you're feeling very stressed and overwhelmed and very vatogenic, you want foods that are heavier, things that are just going to stabilize you. Whereas if you're a very, very grounded, inert kapha, you might need more stimulating things. So Ayurveda on the surface, the dietary sides can look very complicated, but actually if you rein it in and look through the lens of common sense, it's actually pretty easy. So like now moving into summer, particularly this hot weather, the hot weather we're having, we'll be adopting more of an anti-pitta diet. So foods that are cooler, more, anti-inflammatory, rather than lots of, spicy, heating, more winter foods. Mm-hmm. So what I eat now is very much aligning with that seasonal shift rather than just a one size fits all. How can you? But
that makes so much more sense, really, doesn't it, as well?
How can you eat the same things all year? Think about your body's needs in the middle of July compared to the middle of January. Completely different needs. Your circulation, your immunity. You can't eat the same things and expect to stay the same. Like you have to. You have to.
Variety.
Yeah. So I think that's a really powerful. It's often miscommunicated, but a very powerful aspect of living Ayurvedically, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think about smoothies in winter?
Oh.
Only because I've heard about it, because I love smoothies, and I remember someone saying to me, you really shouldn't be having smoothies in winter. And I obviously don't have them as much, but I'm just intrigued while we're on that subject.
I think if you're the risk of having smoothies in winter is that they're cold and obviously hard to digest. I think as long as you're adopting other things that support robust digestion. So whether it's things like ginger teas.
I'm obsessed with ginger tea. I have like 3 a day. Is that too bad?
No, it's perfect. No.
Honestly, it's like my new favourite thing, but I love ginger tea.
So if you were having like a cold smoothie,
followed by 3 ginger teas.
You'd be flying. So, and that's the other thing as well. It's like someone saying you something's bad. like that's inherently wrong. Nothing is bad. For you, it might be brilliant.
Yeah, it's more just a habit because it's a quick and easy way, a nutritious fix of like getting something in. And I love it for the girls as well. You know, it's just a good staple in our house. And I just always remembered someone saying, oh, you know, you should be having like warm foods. And I'm like, I do outside of the times I'm having sweet.
So if you're having one cold meal and 2 warm meals, then you're winning, aren't you? So same my middle daughter, the Pitta, she has smoothies all year.
Okay.
And I've got no problems with that. So less dogma, I think, is a good, with particularly Ayurvedic nutrition, I think a bit more flexibility is often a good thing, more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how that'll be received, but.
And if someone could only do one thing to support their well-being starting tomorrow, what would you recommend?
I mean, I'd say get your sleep embedded.
Yeah.
And I'd include within that the circadian alignment, because I think, like you said a minute ago, if your sleep is bad, everything else goes out the window, doesn't it? Because you're tired, so you gravitate towards sugary food.
Mm-hmm.
You exercise because you feel tired. You're grouchy, so your relationships suffer. So I think getting that, what was it? Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep. Yeah, that book. That book is paradigm changing because it shows just.
Well, I was going to ask you at the end what book has impacted you the most.
Yeah, that
maybe
book
that
is
one.
massive. You could get him on. I mean, he is amazing.
Okay,
If you're listening.
Yeah, if you're listening. And it just, even things like if you have 2 bad nights sleep, if your metabolic health is bang on, so your blood sugar profiles, insulin, et cetera, if you have 2 bad nights sleep in a row, less than 5 hours, most people will be in the pre-diabetic zone the following day. So not because you've eaten differently, nothing's changed other than the fact that you have had 2 nights bad sleep. Suddenly you're pre-diabetic. So it's not people think about the sleep being tired. It is, but it's so metabolically, biochemically, physiologically, we have to get that good sleep. Alzheimer's, poor sleep is one of the biggest risk factors for Alzheimer's. Like we talk about, cancer, the carcinogenic.
Yeah.
So I think everything else that you should do to be healthy becomes so hard if you're tired. So getting your sleep in line and sufficient would be, I think, has to be a linchpin.
And are there any tips that, Ayurvedic tips that you can give to help people who might suffer or struggle with sleep?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. I mean, ironically, so your melatonin is dictated by what you do in the morning. So your melatonin works on a 14-hour countdown clock. So when you get up, the clock starts ticking. So if you get up at 9 in the morning, the melatonin is not going to kick in until 11. It takes about an hour and a half to reach. So you're not going to be ready to go to sleep until about 1-ish.
Wow.
So you're done. You don't know what you think you're going to do. You could drink all the chamomile tea in the world. If you go to bed at 10 or 11, I mean, you can't go to sleep. You haven't got the melatonin. So your melatonin and your GABA, your neurotransmitters are dependent upon that circadian alignment. So to go to bed at the right time, so for most people, about 10 to 10:30 is kind of like the hormonal optimum.
Okay.
Because that then means if you're going to bed, say you're asleep by 10:30 and you want your 7 to 8 hours, that means you can then get up by 6-ish, which is rough 5 to 6, which is a great time to entrain with the rising sun, and then goes on ad infinitum. So if you're suffering with bad sleep, and it's counterintuitive because if people who are sleeping badly often lie in, and that then makes it even harder that coming night to go to sleep.
A vicious cycle.
And it's so hard to break. And they've done studies with people with chronic fatigue syndrome, and in sleep clinics, they force them to get up at like 6. And for the first 10 days, they are, crippled. It's the worst they've ever been. And then things begin to improve. And usually by day 30, their energy is the best it's been and the fatigue is the least it's been, just because their cortisol, melatonin profiles, the morning and evening profiles are kind of bang on. So if you're suffering with bad sleep, getting up earlier, as counterintuitive as it sounds, is fundamental. But then obviously you've got to go to bed at the right time. And also avoiding...
Put your phone away.
Put the phone away. Don't, I think like the 10 o'clock news. I mean, that's a public health time bomb as well. Before you go to bed, watching war and famine and death and
fear.
Before you go to sleep. So just making sure that, Ayurveda talks about a kind of like a 9 p.m. withdrawal. I talk about it in the book actually, where it gets to 9 p.m. and that's your cue for withdrawing from the world. There's nothing you shouldn't be productive. We shouldn't be looking at emails. Our day is done. It's all about setting myself up for greatness the next day now.
Nice.
Getting my sleep, getting my eating routine bang on, getting to sleep at the right time so that tomorrow I can be the very best version of myself. So that kind of 9:30 withdrawal, no blue light, no smartphones, no doom scrolling, no emails. I think that's a very powerful. You get the morning right, get that right. And most people in my experience, about 80% of people who don't sleep well, get their sleep pretty much bang on through those 2 tweaks.
It's quite simple as well,
so
isn't
simple.
it? It's just
Yeah.
having the willpower and the
Yeah.
to wake up early, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is
For
the
some
willpower.
people,
Yeah, and it will often get worse before it gets better.
Okay,
But I think
so just stick with it. Yeah.
And I think that's, so much of Ayurveda is simple. I think the risk of that is almost that it sounds weak because it is so simple, but I think we're quite simple. Our bodies are quite simple, like
We
eat
just
well, move, sleep.
overcomplicated it, haven't we, nowadays?
So I think that sleep aspect is so important. But that book, read Why We Sleep. Give it all
I've
the
seen
information.
that. I
It's
think
brilliant.
I've wish listed.
Ironically, it's very bad for sleeping because you can't put it down. It's like, gets about 11 p.m. and you're still going.
And then I think we're going to have to wrap up kind of soon, but it would just be interesting to hear some of your favourite herbs, that you use for certain things, either immunity, gut health.
Okay. I take a herb called ashwagandha.
Oh, it's my favourite.
Every day.
Yeah, me too. I take it every day. Yeah, I have done for years.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I think it's a win-win. It gives you, it's kind of like a perfect support for 21st century living is physical.
I do it for my nervous system.
Well, if you're vartigenic, it's manna from heaven. So I think ashwagandha is brilliant. I think for women, Shatavari is a great addition because it's brilliant for female hormones, whether it's menstrual cycle, whether it's menopause, perimenopause, it's a brilliant just female tonic herb.
Okay.
Actually translates as she with 100 husbands, Shatavari, which is that's a good thing or a bad thing. So that's a great herb. So I use ashwagandha every day. I think turmeric should be a staple in our day-to-day diet, whether it's in food, whether it's a drink or a herb or supplement. Another herb called triphala, which is made up of 3 superfruits, which is a gut tonic, par excellence. It's prebiotic, probiotic. It's been shown to extend lifespan in certain studies. It's, it's a gut microbiome tonic. So, I think learning a little bit about Ayurvedic herbs, spending a bit of time actually researching them and working out, well, what are my needs? If you've got a young child, it might be more sleep or energy. If you're moving into November, it might be cold and flu prevention. Actually sitting down and thinking, well, okay, over the next few months, what do I actually need? I've got a really manic period at work, so I'm going to need more energy. And actually just, if you spend a little bit of time researching herbs, it's amazing how quickly you acquire knowledge and then how you can say, well, actually, I can use this now because it's what I need more of. So I think a little bit of knowledge of herbally gives you a profound exponential gain longer term. So I think knowing what you need and how a herb can target that is really important.
That makes sense.
That does make sense. I mean, all of this has just been fascinating. And I feel like we honestly could speak to you for hours. It's such a shame.
I've really enjoyed this conversation.
We're definitely going to need another round 2 at some point. But Sam, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
And where can people find you? What's your Instagram?
Is it Dr. Sam Watts?
Yes. I don't really
tag you.
It's Dr. Sam Watts. Sorry, Dr. Sam Watts. Because it changed.
And then you've got a website?
We have, it's mindbodymedical.co.uk.
Okay, perfect. And people can find out more about you and your book.
Yeah, it's all there.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.